first meeting will be the special meeting, which will encompass the 3 hearings that are required by statute to have annually. So what we're gonna do, just for everybody that'd like to speak, we have gold sheets in the back of the room if you wanna participate in public comment. Please grab one of those as you walk in, and then it will have you speak during each hearing. So we have 3 hearings this evening, one on student fees, one on bullying, and one on parental involvement. So those 3. So if you have specific comments related to those topics, we'd like you to speak during the comment for the hearing, and then we will actually be taking affirmative action in the board meeting, which will happen second this evening. So questions, let me know, otherwise we'll start here momentarily.
Hi, Samantha Johnson, I'm one of the teachers in high school. English, sophomores and seniors. Yeah. We love them. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Just having a good summer?
Summer. Well, I've seen the teenagers in Europe, the first 2 weeks of summer, really exciting. And so, 18 students and 11 parents. I mean, it was exciting. It was one of the best trips I've ever done. My parents were favorites. They were coming. Good to see you.
Yep.
Hey, Rob, are you ready to go? All right, good evening. We're going to start here in just a minute or so. We're going to begin with the special public hearing. All right, we'll begin this evening. I'll call this meeting to order, the Bennington Board of Education, for our special meeting to address the public hearings that are on the agenda for this evening. I think I've explained this before, but if anyone would like to speak, please grab one of these gold sheets from the back room, and we will be glad to take your comments under the public comment part of the agenda. The first item that we would like to discuss this evening relates to the student fees fund. Before we begin, I'd like to just welcome Dr. Claus. It's his first meeting, so welcome to Bennington. Glad to have you here. I have a gift from the board. I don't know when it is appropriate to provide a gift, but I will do this here. I won't embarrass you too much. This is Badger gear for your family, so that hopefully when you're out and about, you can all be decked out in Bennington blue.
Thank you very much. That's very
You're
nice.
welcome. You're welcome. All right, so we are back to discussing the public hearing for this evening. It is governed under the Nebraska Open Meetings Act, a copy of which is on the back wall. We have everyone here this evening except for Mr. Shannon. He's unable to join us this evening, so we will proceed accordingly. The first item on the agenda is reviewing the amount of money from the student fee fund. Do you want to update the board on that piece, Dr. Claus?
Yeah, so the student fee fund had a beginning balance in September 1st of $24,910.22. This fund is used primarily and pretty much only for the cooperative use agreement for one-to-one technology. And so students put into that almost like an insurance program. If something breaks in their one-to-one technology, then it is a reduced cost or no cost to them to fix it. So the income in comes from that. The expenditure is when there are issues with the technology. And so it collected $7,938.26 in revenue, expended $7,887.26. So exactly $51 increase in that fund to date. So the total is $24,961. And as always, our students that are on free and reduced lunch is waived for them. All student fees are waived.
Thank you. I appreciate you digging into what was in that fund too for all of us.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, the second item on our agenda this evening is to have a public hearing to discuss, consider, and receive input on our student fee policy. So we'd like for anyone who would like to speak this evening on the student fee policy to come forward, fill out one of those gold sheets. We're happy to hear from you. This is your opportunity to provide us feedback and any input that you would like. You want to call up the policy? Is it on there?
Yes.
Does any board member have any other commentary on this? I think this is the opportunity for the public to really talk to us. It doesn't seem as though anybody would like to speak this evening on this particular item. All right, I think we'll go on to the next one. This next item before the board this evening is to discuss, consider, and receive input on a parental involvement policy. We'd like to hear from the public on this particular policy. The board has reviewed it. It was provided in our board notes. And we will be taking action on this item in the actual board meeting which follows. But does anybody care to speak to the board on the parental involvement policy? Okay. And then the last item up on this special board meeting is to discuss, consider, and receive input on the bullying policy. State law requires us to review this annually. We have done so. This is the public's opportunity to speak with us about the bullying policy. Does anybody have any feedback on that? Quiet group tonight. Okay. All right. I don't believe there's anything else before the board, so I will go ahead and adjourn the hearing for this evening at 6:06. Seems awfully short, but hopefully we can hear from some folks at our next board meeting. All right, we're going to shift gears, and I will now call the Bennington Board of Education regular board meeting to order at 6:07 this evening. Our meetings are governed by the Nebraska Open Meetings Act, a copy of which is located on the back wall of the boardroom. I've already mentioned this evening, if you'd like to speak to us, these gold sheets, please fill one out. Come forward, we'd be happy to hear from you. I think we will begin this evening with public forum. Looks like we have one individual that would like to speak with us. Mr. Hughes, are you here tonight?
Yes.
Would you come forward? As you're coming forward, I'll remind everybody of the ground rules for public forum. Generally, we like everyone to take up to 5 minutes to speak with us. And this is your opportunity for us to listen to your comments. So we will not typically engage with you. It's not that we're not interested, but this is your opportunity to engage with us. If there are follow-up items, Dr. Claus and the administration will follow up with you within a reasonable time period. And if you do not hear from them, please let us know. We'll be happy to follow up ourselves. So will you please state your name and address?
Certainly. My name is Ty Hughes. My wife, children, and I live in the Bennington community. We've had 3 children in the district with 2 recent graduates of Bennington High. As a family, we've been intimately involved in the school system since June 2016. Regrettably, we will no longer employ the district for the remainder of our children's education. I offer an explanation as to why tonight with a cooperative spirit. We will continue to live in Bennington because we enjoy the community and the relationships we build. However, I've chosen to lead my family into a new phase of life due to strong convictions of the following. The district has changed rapidly over the past 7 years when it comes to the current infatuation with gender issues. Not only has this stance changed, but the pace with which it has evolved alarms me. The district is now educating our children in these matters cleverly tucked within diversity, equity, and inclusion, social emotional learning, general curriculum, and a handful of unbridled teachers. We see clubs, groups, and other interests celebrating and requiring tolerance of ideals that are unnatural. The school district is employed to teach healthcare to its students, not sexuality. Sexuality remains appropriately under the purview of the parents. Yet, as evidenced by the June school board meeting and commensurate vote, the district is stepping out of bounds in this regard, in my opinion. Why, I ask, is this happening? It appears that the district is catering to an extremely small population with an extraordinarily loud voice. Gender fluidity and same-sex attraction, however, are not the norm, nor are they the majority of the way people live their lives. It's never been that way, so why is it now part of the core curriculum in the public school system? My personal conviction may come more from Christian values, and I acknowledge it's not the district's job to mirror my beliefs. However, even basic human values, which we can share, would lead to a stand against these ideas. The mission of Bennington Public Schools is to provide educational opportunities in a safe, caring environment that will prepare all students to meet the challenges of the future. Human gender is perhaps the most clear and obvious physical trait known to mankind. It is not a matter of kindness to perpetuate these ideas. In fact, I can't think of a more unkind position to take than to promote such a farcical sense of reality. Doing so will develop a generation that won't know up from down. I would reiterate, it's the teaching of sexuality that's the responsibility of the parent, and I do not believe it has a place in the school system. A stand on this issue is the most important item I bring to your attention tonight. Secondarily, though, I would call on the administration to more actively monitor and require professionalism and how coaches speak to our student athletes. The instances of vulgarity, obscenities, and generally cruel speech I've seen in this district by coaches has just astonished me. Many of the tirades and the word choices I've personally witnessed would be an HR violation in most of our work environments. From the middle school through the high school, it can be witnessed in public games, private practices, from my own firsthand knowledge of locker rooms and on huddle. It's not hard to observe, which is why I find it hard to believe it's being tolerated. I remind you that our children are called minors for a reason. They are impressionable, and we place them in an educational system where they can have role models. Oftentimes, we call these coaches. So what are we modeling if we allow them to verbally deconstruct our children in this manner on a daily basis? I would encourage you as a district leadership to observe, monitor, and hold accountable our coaches to a higher standard. Our own children have experienced wonderful and exemplary coaches in this district. I'm just asking that they all be held to a standard and that you take time to monitor so that it's appropriate for working with these kids. For these primary reasons, I've chosen to lead my family in a new direction when it comes to education. I will continue to happily live in Bennington and enjoy the friendships we've made. I will continue to support my friends and their children in the Bennington events. You see, I'm here today without a dog in the fight anymore because I care. My children will be educated somewhere else going forward. But I still believe that the school system should be a safe haven for our children in a strangely curious world. With half the board as new members and a new superintendent in the district, I'm calling on you to step up and lead whether the wind's blow, for, or against you. You all ran, were nominated, elected, and are now trusted with these and other important decisions. Everything that is tolerated in this district is a direct reflection of your leadership while you have the seat you sit in tonight. So I'm imploring you to have a renewed focus and vigor and to handle these items for the sake of fulfilling the stated mission of the Bennington school system. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Appreciate your time this evening. All right, is there anyone else that would wish to speak in the public forum this evening? All right, seeing no further folks wanting to speak, I believe the only other item before we dive into the consent agenda would be the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't know if we did yet, so go ahead. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I think the first item of business is our consent agenda, which includes the approval of the agenda, minutes from our June 12th regular board meeting, July bills for this evening, which I think were Steve and myself, so I'm happy to speak on that. Personnel, so resignations and hirings, and the sale of district property. So the consent agenda typically does not have discussion, but I know we have historically mentioned key items with respect to bills. And so I know Jeremy, you looked at those as well. A lot of the bills for the board's benefit this month were related to summer maintenance issues. So lots of mulch, lots of repair parts. It was a home improvement list for sure. So the other item I would note is that we did approve, I think at our last month's meeting, the Cushman four-wheeler type vehicle for use by Mr. Edens, and that was purchased and came through the bills this month. So, did you have anything else to add?
Nope, you summed up quite well.
All right. So I think we would like a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented. Second.
Thank you. First by Tim and second by Jeremy. Jody, call the roll.
Christie?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
All right, the next item would be the reports and presentations to the board section of our meeting. And it's kind of a light month. We have the 1 month of the year that we let our administrators take a little breather on Monday evenings. So we have a couple reports this evening. Dr. Claus, do you want to start with your report?
Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry, I'm not used to running the computer at the same time, so bear with me if I don't do very well on that. A few items in my report. First one's, it's Bennington Public Schools, so we're going to start with enrollment like we always do. During the August meeting, we'll have a more accurate enrollment for you guys. Obviously, as we get, I think our next meeting is about 2 days before school starts. But on July 1, our student management system rolls over. So it's the first time we get who's actually registered within the district. And as of today, we have 4,210 K through 12 students and 80 pre-K students, for next year. And so that'd be an increase of 185 students from last year compared to this year at this time. We do anticipate probably 30 to 40 more registrations between now and the middle of August. So we'll see how that pans out. One interesting note, in October of 22, so last October, we were projecting 4,296 students. So we are slightly lower than that projection as of last year. And so that's where we're at as of enrollment now, but like I said, as of next month, we'll be a really accurate update. Second thing is our school resource officer. Douglas County is, we have a long-standing collaboration with Douglas County to have a school resource officer, and that contract is extending from August of 23 to August of 26. Obviously, we're very lucky to be served by Officer Tony Raymaker, who's been in the district, I think like a month-ish, give or take. So we're learning together. Officer Raymaker will work in all 8 buildings throughout the year. The district's financial obligation is $6,512 in the first year, escalating up to $64,513 in the third year. And so that all is coming up this month. Third thing I have on there is our budget information timeline. And so this is going to be a little bit different for you and me because the rules are constantly changing. But Dr. Blumenkamp and I are beginning to work through the finalizing the 22-23 budget and then projecting out the 23-24. Dr. Hawk did a great job leading the district in a nice position with its estimates and where he felt like we would be going for next year. Most all the decisions he made throughout the course of the last 6 months dictate the budget for next year. So most all that is done. But what we're trying to do is merge what Bennington Public Schools knows as the budget with what I'm familiar with. So we're working on doing that together, and we're really going to get after the next couple weeks. Obviously, our main objection when we do that is just to ensure our kids and our staff have what they need to educate our 4,200 students. What is new this year, though, is the rules and procedures with the property tax asking. And so based on growth, our property tax asking is capped. And so that's a whole new thing for us, and we're trying to match it all up with what we know with information today compared to what we're going to find out from the county when valuations are certified on August 20th. And so I did put a timeline up there for you. Valuations are received from the county on the 20th. It's a pretty busy month. You go from August 20th to September 30th, and we don't even know the valuation until that day, until the 20th of August. So it's going to go pretty fast here. But we'll get that valuation. Then by September 5th, we have to inform the county whether we're going to be part of the joint public meeting. A reminder, the joint public meeting is if you are over 2% tax asking plus growth. And so they give us a growth number on the 20th plus 2%. If we go over that, we would go to the joint public meeting. I'm guessing this year it's going to be a pretty light crowd at the joint public meeting because there is so much more money being put into school systems with the new funding model. Not as many schools, because if you receive a bunch, and whether it's special education, and you receive a bunch with the new foundation aid, you're not going to ask for more next year than you did last year. Bennington's a unique situation because we're not receiving quite as much in that plan as some of the neighboring districts. And so I'm not certain if we'll end up there or not, but we'll have to figure that out after the 20th. If we're over that, we'd have to go to a joint public meeting on the 20th of September down in Douglas County. A new state mandate, one elected school official has to attend. So congratulations with that. On the 11th of September, we will have a hearing for our budget. Regardless, if we don't have to go to the joint public hearing, we can do a tax request and a budget hearing that night. If we have to go to the joint public hearing, we'll just do a budget hearing that evening. That way we can hear from the patrons on September 20th if need be. We'll have to come back between the 21st and 29th, do our tax asking hearing, approve the resolution on tax asking and a budget. And so we will have to schedule a meeting for that late September. We'll try to do that the next meeting maybe, if that's okay. And then by the 30th, we've submitted to the county. So kind of jammed all in there in about a 5-week period where we're gonna have to have several meetings. Any questions on that? Okay. Next thing I have in there is just the new teacher induction program. I feel like these are very important. Anytime that you're adding staff members, trying to acclimate them to the district, ensure that they know not only the building level stuff, like how, you know, the safety and security and where their keys are and all that stuff, but also what our expectations are in the district and our curriculum and our teaching strategies. And so I was really pleased to see all that Bennington Public Schools does with their teacher induction program. It starts off with the teacher orientation day on the 9th and 10th, which you can see all the stuff that happens during that. But in addition, they're assigned a mentor that has a year-long plan of what they're going to talk about to help them throughout the course of the entire year. I think that's really important for us to do, and it's in really good shape. I reviewed it all and was really impressed with all that Bennington does to make sure that our staff members are ready to go. And we do have 58 as of this time, maybe 59 as of today, with 8.5 openings. So maybe we filled one of those today. Any questions on that? All right, last thing I just want to say thank you. The board, the staff, the community, everybody's just been super welcoming during the first week here. We're really excited to be a member of the Bennington community and, you know, serve our over 4,200 kids. So thank you guys for all that you do.
Thank you. We do not have a high school, middle school, or elementary report this evening. We did get updates in our board packet, but I don't believe there was anything of note. So I guess we will move forward with our committee reports. There were several committee meetings over the last month. We'll start with the Building and Finance Committee that met on June 28th with Dr. Claus and Dr. Blumenkamp. We had a great meeting. There was a lot of activity. There's a lot of things to manage, a lot of repairs and items that we're working on to get everything ready for August. So do you guys want to give us an update, Dr. Claus and Blumenkamp?
Sure. Yeah, notes are in your packet on what we covered. Again, quite a few items that were repairs throughout the district, a lot of concrete work, a lot of specialized concrete work with our bus barn and the pads and how we repaired those. Looking at some playground equipment that's being installed at Heritage Elementary, Pine Creek Elementary as well. We talked about some repairs here. In the district office, we had in our records room, we talked about this here in the last couple of months, our records room had the floor start to collapse in our records room where we held our fireproof filing cabinets. We've since moved those. It's where the old stage used to be when this was a gymnasium. So we've gotten a bid to get that fixed, and that's in the report tonight as well, and up for approval here later in the board meeting. If you want to scroll down, Dr. Claus, there's a list of items at the bottom of those notes, I believe. They'll have what we talked about, a training room renovation as well. We've talked about this for many years. Here in Bennington, the training room that we currently have at the high school is just too small for 1,000 students to be serviced in that area. We have the old weight room that has been a multitude of things throughout the course of the last 4 or 5 years since we moved from there to the new weight room when we added on at the high school. And so there is a bid for $133,000 there as well. Our marquee at the high school has just needs a facelift. It's time to get it repainted, and so we've got some bid there. I talked about the concrete records room repairs, some window replacement. And we haven't purchased a van in over a decade in Bennington, and so we're looking for some purchasing authority to be able to, getting vans is difficult, and being able to have that authority to go to go negotiate for a van when one comes available. We ask for that authority as well in that meeting.
My understanding on the vans is when COVID hit and the supply chain issues, all of the vehicle manufacturers kind of went away from the chassis that you would use on a 10-passenger van for their better selling products, because that's what they had. And they never really recovered nor even really opened the 10-passenger van. So not only is Bennington Public Schools looking for one, so is every school in the state of Nebraska. And so the hope would be if the approval would be given, if something did arise and it was available, we'd be able to act quick because if we're gonna wait, we're just not gonna get it because there's so many people right now. We did find like 8 of them that were available. They're asking almost $80,000, which is about double what it would have been about 4 years ago. And so that was a little bit excessive. But if something else happened to come available, the building finance felt like that's the appropriate amount.
And lastly, just to appreciate you guys getting multiple bids on all of these. I mean, there was, some of these are smaller jobs and it's hard to find folks that are interested in doing the work. So to the extent you're able, I really appreciate you guys doing that, make sure we do the best.
Mr. Eaton's been very good. He's very good about doing that, so appreciate all his hard work.
And one quick update on there, the Pine Creek Playground fence, we did get a bid yesterday for $8,944. And so we would ask for approval on that one. It didn't show up till yesterday, so.
And that was the same company that did the bus barn fence for board's benefit, which was, I think, acceptable.
Yes.
Are there any questions from Christy here? You guys especially did have the benefit of the hours-long meeting going through all of this, so. Okay. Tim, Jeremy, did you guys have anything else to add for building and finance?
Nope.
Okay. I think we'll move on then to the policy committee that also met on July 5th. Yes, okay, July 5th. We had a meeting with Dr. Plaus and Jeremy and myself. Steve was unable to attend, so it was the 2 of us discussing. We reviewed the policies that were changes necessary as a result of the Nebraska legislation that recently wrapped up. So that is one of the items on our action items for this evening. We've only received a packet from NASB, which is where we get our policies from for half of those policies. And so we're still waiting on another group. So there will be additional policies that were a result of legislation as well coming forward shortly, hopefully. And then I did mention earlier this year, we made a commitment as a board to go through and do a periodic review of our policies, make sure that we're looking at them more regularly. So we have gotten through the 100s and 200s. It is a slow, arduous process, but we are making our way through that, and I think doing some good updates to those. And so those are also action items for this evening. And then certainly we did discuss and review the student fees, parental and family involvement, and bullying prevention policies as well within the committee structure. So are there any other comments or feedback? Jeremy, did you have anything else?
No.
We have a relatively light agenda with no coordinator spotlight or lobbyist reports. I believe that takes us to our unfinished business. The first item would be to discuss, consider, and take action on our summer maintenance and transportation purchases. These are the items we previously discussed this evening associated with the Building and Finance Committee's review of those purchases. And we are asking for, Jeremy and I both agreed that we should move forward, Tim as well. So I think it was a unanimous vote from the committee to move forward with these purchases as the best possible items for consideration this evening. There is a motion on the floor, and then we'll have discussion if there is any.
I move for approval of all summer maintenance and transportation purchases as presented.
I second.
Thank you, Tim and Jeremy. Is there any discussion from the board on the list of items?
I just know if people don't know much about concrete or anything, not that I'm some star at it or something, but it's simply put, it's expensive. It's very expensive. I have a neighbor that pours concrete and it is outrageous. So if you're thinking the numbers are skewed or something, it's so high. So I hope you guys understand that we've got a lot of work to do and a lot of stuff to fix. So it adds up fast.
And the bus barn concrete is 8 inches as opposed to 4 to 5 inches, so that bumps up the cost of that exponentially.
And And then the other big ticket item, which I think we mentioned, is a training room and updating that at the high school. The space we have there, existing space, is just not sufficient for the number of students that are utilizing that space. And so we're trying to be good stewards of the space we do have and make that into a health classroom, and it's going to be a multi-purpose area. So there is going to be some change in terms of what folks are using that space. And so it comes with that, we'll try to manage those expectations, but we need the space.
Yeah.
And so the renovation is really necessary at this point. Is there any other discussion or questions anybody has? All right, can you call the roll?
Christie,
Yes.
Kara,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
Tim.
Yes.
All right, the next item of unfinished business is for us to discuss, consider, and take action on the elementary, middle school, and high school handbooks. There was a preliminary review of that at our last board meeting, so this will be the second time the board has had an opportunity to look at those. I appreciate the administration's efforts to go through the handbook and highlight for us some of the major changes that we made in these are review. Obviously, these are important items, so I hope the board has had an opportunity to review those items that are considered. Dr. Plus, do you want to highlight anything for us, anything of note? And if not, that's fine as well.
Yeah, I think there's a few of them. We just make sure that we're all on the same page. First one is with the new laws that passed this year, the eliminating suspensions in students pre-K through second grade. We're still a little unsure on the exact specifics of that, what in school or out of school or what that exactly looks like. But as of now, what we know is we are not able to suspend any students pre-K through second grade. And so that's something that's going to be a little bit different. Not that there are tons of suspensions in those grade levels, but they do occasionally happen. So that's no longer going to be allowed. There is a proposal to move the consequences from tardies from every 3 to 5 and 10. This will allow a little more flexibility both for our students and administration dealing with excessive tardies. Wanted to note there is admission prices changing at the middle school level from $1 for students to $2 for students. This is Eastern Midlands Conference thing, and we are also the lowest in the conference. So it's just catching up with everybody. In addition, there's a couple of officials pay categories that we have to get up into the array as well. The other big one of note I thought was probably worth discussing was our cell phones for students at the high school. I'm sorry for the students in attendance. There is a proposal to, as of right now, essentially it's teacher discretion. Kids come in, they put their cell phone into a holding area or a sleeve or whatever the teacher has. If the teacher wants them to use the phone for instructional purposes, they can. If they want to allow it, that's okay as well. And then they can leave. And it's kind of teacher by teacher. Beginning of next year, it will be every single class where students will put their phones into a sleeve or a holding area during instructional time. And then the teacher has the ability to give it back if need be during the class period. But it'll be the expectation in all the classes.
Dr. Plus,
Yes.
you mentioned too, I did think it was helpful to know that the leadership team at the high school really thought through that and decided that that was a good, cell phones are getting in the way of learning.
I
And I think we all know
appreciate
that,
Because
but yeah.
I could hear this going out on social media, like the new superintendent came in and put his fist down on this, but that's not true.
Right.
Thank you for noting that. Yeah, it was a leadership team at the high school. Pretty much all handbook reviews and procedure reviews are done in a team fashion. And so it was a leadership team at the high school that came up with that idea.
So kids will have their cell phones during homeroom, before school, after school, lunchtime,
Yes,
correct? I mean, so it's,
In
when
past
we say
years.
instructional time,
Yep.
it's.
just in the classrooms. Yep. And I think those were kind of the largest portions of the handbook change.
I know the board's had an opportunity to review those. There were quite a few changes, which I know happened over the course of the year, and I appreciate taking note and making those changes at one time. So do any board members have any other discussion, comments that they would like to address?
So are they bringing food in a lot? Kids want other food? Because we have that other food, outside food, they have to sit in the office to eat it. I don't know, I just didn't know if there's a lot of food coming in up there.
I apologize. I do not know the answer, but I can't find it out for you.
Okay, do that once, I just want to
Will
see
do.
what that goes as.
And I do know that there are laws associated with kids bring food into the school system, especially if it's a lunchtime. You can't have any competing food. So it might be just one of those where they can't bring it in during the lunchtime, which is typically when they are. It's just easier to do it all.
Absolutely.
Will that impact the sports teams at all? I know my daughter played basketball last year, so sometimes if they had a long road trip, they'd bring in, like order Jimmy John's, and parent would bring that in, so the kids could then have it on the bus ride for like going to Norris and have some dinner.
I think they'll be okay. Maybe we'll find ways to, obviously, we're not trying to malnourish our kids by any stretch, so we'll find ways to do it.
I would guess this is just for around the lunch period.
That's my assumption as
okay.
well, is we just got a few too many kids rolling in with McDonald's and just trying to get them to eat it within the office. Sure.
All right, I think there was a motion on the floor. All right, I move to approve the elementary, middle school, and high school handbooks for the 2023-24 school year as presented.
I can second, thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Any further discussion on the handbook changes? All right, do we call the roll?
Jeremy,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Christie,
Yes.
Kara,
Yes.
Allison.
Yes. Motion passes.
If it's okay, I'd like to thank Dr. Hoagie and Dr. Blumenkamp for all their work, because these are, those two action items have a lot to them. They're one action item, but they all have obviously multiple things to them. They've done a great job of getting everybody organized, including myself, to get those there. So I just want to make sure and thank them.
Yes. And I know getting them done before verification days is nice. Makes things much simpler, so I know it's a rush, but much appreciated by everybody. All right, that brings us to our new business for this evening, and the first item is the discussion and consideration revising policies related to changes from the Nebraska legislature, and they relate to policy 50202 non-resident students option enrollment, 504.11 weapons, 60507 part-time enrollment, 61107 graduation requirements, 60503 program for high ability learners, and finally the regulation associated with that. So Dr. Claus, do you want to run us through some of these changes and give us the highlights? I know we've had time to review them, but anything you think is warranting discussion?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one, the non-resident students option enrollment. They have changed the rules associated with capacity for special education students. So in the past, generally schools would set a capacity limit if they were worried about option within their special education department. So, 15 students per teacher, or whatever your limit was. You no longer can set limits like that. Every kid has to be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. It doesn't necessarily change the result for the student, but we'd have to actually review everyone on a case-by-case basis. My understanding at this time, because Bennington is closed to option enrollment, that counts as a reason to not accept regardless of special education status. I'm going to verify that with our school attorney, but that's my understanding at this time. It won't change much, unfortunately, coming into Bennington since we're closed to options. Then again, that's a state statute. It's not necessarily an optional policy. The second one on weapons is just with the new state concealed carry law, and ASB thought it might be smart just to clarify that new law does not apply to school grounds. And so kind of always been the policy, but just clarifying it with the new concealed carry laws. The part-time enrollment, LB 705, revised what part-time enrollment extracurricular activity involvement looked like. It had typically been where you had to attend 2 classes in order to participate. It's now 1 class in order to participate. And so it says 5 credits, but that's 1 high school class for us. And so if you are enrolled in one and take advantage of the amazing offerings we have here at Bennington Public Schools for 1 class, you can participate in activities. And then the fourth one on there has graduation requirements. This year, actually, it'll be, I think it was 452 last year, it got modified in 705 this year, and it required the personal finance course to be put in for graduation. Bennington has been doing this forever, and so it wasn't a huge change for us. In there, we did have some cleanup language because when the class of 2020, they had some provision devices a different year, and so it does strike all the 2020 stuff as well. The fifth one is the program for high ability learners, and so this came from both our curriculum instruction assessment department and our student services. just work on updating our how policy to reflect our practices. And so on the policy side, the only thing that changes one word, it says artistic, but we say intellectual and creative in there, and so creative kind of houses artistic, so it's not a huge change to the policy. What's probably the larger change would be number 6, which is our regulation for high ability. That's their procedures that we follow. Previously, there was maybe some inconsistency in the language. One had a standard deviation, one had 92nd percent, the other one had, I can't remember what it was, but within all of our qualifying percentages, we want to make them exactly 95th percentile. That's best practice for gifted learners, the 95th percentile. And so we would just make them uniform all the way through, clean that language up. We've actually been doing that in practice for a while. About 19% of our students qualify for HAL using the 95th percentile as it is. And so it'd just be a matter of us putting in our procedures as we've been doing.
So it looks like a couple of those are optional policies, the high ability learners and the weapons policy, but I believe the rest are not optional. So are there any questions from the board? Any further clarification, administration?
I did have a question about the weapons one, and I understand that is certainly during the school day. How is this handled for school events?
All school events, school property,
Okay.
in the school vans, if it has to do with school, it applies.
Right, there is a motion on the floor. Oh, I guess that's not true.
First reading.
I'm getting ahead of myself. This is our first reading, so thank you for jumping in. So we will have one other discussion point next month if necessary, but the motion will be next month. So something for us to think about. Certainly, we can take feedback if there is anything. All right, the next item is for us to discuss, consider, and take action with respect to several other policies. 50602 on student organizations, 508.18 administration of Narcan, and 508.19 behavior point of contact. And I believe some of these were related to Nebraska legislation as well, just a different group. These are modifications.
Yeah, so on the 50602 student organizations, a new law went through allowing a group of organizations that are in administrative, or that are in 36 USC federal code, the ability to provide information to students during non-instructional time. And so maybe before school, lunch, after school, potentially during instructional time if they worked it out with the administration, but we have to allow them access once a year now. And so there's a whole list of them. I think there's like 90 some organizations that now qualify for that. And so they have to work with the administration to ensure that whatever that would look like, they don't just get free access to the schools and do whatever they want, but we have to work together with them to provide that once per year. And so that's a new statute, not necessarily optional. The second one is the administration of Narcan. Narcan is, it does not currently have this policy. It does at least worth the discussion. If we want to start keeping Narcan on hand, Narcan can treat a narcotic overdose in an emergency situation. So somebody was having an overdose situation, you give them some Narcan and it helps. Our understanding is if you took Narcan and it was not an overdose situation, there is no negative effects to it. And I believe it's going to go over the counter fairly soon. If you adopt this policy, it does not mean that we're going to start administering Narcan like the first week of school. It would just basically put the policy on the books, and then if we want to start looking into how to do it, how to administer it appropriately, we bring it back to you for review. And that's an optional policy. 508.19 is behavioral point of contact. This is a state statute, LD 852 that was passed this year, just requiring every school to have a behavioral awareness point of contact. And so this person's trained in behavioral awareness, has knowledge of all the community service providers that are available, the resources that are available to kids as well. They would maintain and have access to a registry of local mental health professionals, counseling resources, and then they would help coordinate services for kids and families if needed. And so this is, again, state statute, so there's not a whole lot of option. For Bennington Public Schools, the counselor within each building would serve as our behavioral awareness point of contact. The last one is actually a regulation on foster care transportation. Again, this is kind of an optional one, but all it's doing is codifying what's in federal law and what we have to do with foster care transportation. Essentially saying that if we have a foster care student that moves into the district, we'll work with their origin district or any service, any agencies in the state that they're working with to coordinate who's going to pay for that and how. And so we would do that anyways. This would just be putting it in the policy. Any questions on those?
On the Narcan, what, that's expensive, correct?
I do not know, to be quite honest. I'd have to look into that.
It's roughly about $40.
But that's it? Okay.
And
I thought it was more than that. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say also, just for clarification, it's administered nasally too, so
Okay.
no one would be given an injection.
Okay, okay.
We did have some healthy discussion in the policy committee on that, you know, is this something we need to consider? Is this really an issue in Bennington? And I think we just don't know, right, whether something would be laced with something. And so the thought process was if we can find a way to help our students, maybe it makes sense to consider, so.
Yeah, I think they're keeping it a lot of places now, it's not even like the AED machines that, they're stocking it in public areas just in case of an overdose or accidental overdose. And as Aaron said, potentially even going over the counter.
Yeah, the great part of it is if we ever got to where we were going to administer it and you did administer it to somebody that was not having an overdose, as of this time, not aware of any side effects or any issues. So that's the best part of it.
And there is training with that, if that happens. correct?
There would be, yeah. If we were going to actually administer it, we'd definitely have some training.
We talked about that, training, identifying an opiate overdose versus
Seizure.
a seizure or epilepsy,
Okay, good.
diabetic.
We have it where I am, and the whole entire emergency response team is trained on that piece. And it's housed with our school nurse, and she takes the lead on all of that. So it made me more comfortable with the fact that the medical professional had that kind of locked up and ready to go if needed.
Thank you.
This is just a first reading on these policies. Are there any other questions or anything you'd like the administration to look into before our next board meeting? Many of these are not optional, but you need to be aware of what they are. So if there are things, please let us know. All right, the third item is discussion and consideration of changes to our existing policies, section 100 and 200. And the policy committee took lead with Dr. Hawk on this piece, so Dr. Claus, you did a pass.
I'm going to turn off my microphone.
So I don't know that there's anything too exciting in here, but I do want to go through and let the folks know, you know, the board's had an opportunity to review as well, but kind of highlight. So we're fixing typos and things that we found throughout as we review them. Might as well make sure they're cleaned up. On the 100s, I would say the one item we're adding a new chain of command chart as we grow and as we have so many new faces. I think it would be helpful to have that org chart with people's pictures so we know who those folks are as part of our chain of command chart. And then the EEO policy is really dictated primarily by federal law, and we wanted to remove some words that we've deemed to be superfluous. So in its programs and activities, we're not going to discriminate, period. So it seems like extra language that wasn't necessary. The policy 104.00 dealt with our external review process where the Cognia came in last year and reviewed us, and that happens every 5 years, I believe. The way the policy was drafted, it looked like it was the board's responsibility to do the external review process, which really that was not the intent of the policy. So we added a clause that said, the board will, through its external review process, review the educational system every 5 years. So again, nothing really substantive of change, but more clarification so folks know what that policy is meant to cover. And if you will switch to the 200s, I can speak to that as well. Jeremy, jump in if I'm missing something. Steve isn't here, so. That might be, it's a horrible noise, those of you are sorry. Section 201.02, board membership. So this one might actually be of note to folks. And so we had talked with, this is wrong. So I think we just had a bracketed statement within the policy where we did not have a selection. It was either by ward or district. So we made the choice, right? We should have made that a long time ago. So we cleaned that up. That was more of a typo type thing. The oath of office, this one is just a best practices recommended by the Nebraska Association of School Boards. Traditionally, we just had new board members say the oath, but really probably makes sense for every board member to say the oath at least once, just to kind of refresh what our obligations are. Those are the only two changes I can see here. Okay, so organization of the school board, policy 203.01. This is our board organizational meeting, which occurs in January of each year. We made this change to address the issue we had in January with respect to our tie vote. So we had a tie, and Tim and I have discussed this on multiple occasions, but you know, what do we do in the sense of we have a tie vote for so long, it just didn't make sense for us to not have something in policy to address that. And so we did hear from the community on that. So we as a policy committee sought out recommendations from the Nebraska Association of School Boards. And it sounds as though most school districts in Nebraska either do a flip of the coin or they have a policy which basically says the highest ranking officer from the prior year will step in if you do so many votes. And so the policy committee came up with a number that's certainly up for discussion at 10 votes. So if we go through 10 rounds of voting and we are deadlocked and we cannot agree on an officer position, then I think the policy committee felt like a flip of a coin, there was no logic to that, right? It's just kind of a random chance. And so perhaps it made more sense to have the thought process of somebody that had served in an officer capacity in the prior term would be the best person. And also, you know, one of the issues with the tiebreaker process would be if we aren't able to reach a result, if we have nothing in policy, how do we continue to allow the district to move forward with district business, right? So we have bills to pay, we have teachers to hire, all of those things. And so this will allow us to do that and the vote will be taken. So I think we've discussed, but certainly welcome comments if people have other suggestions. This was kind of a tough one to come up with a solution on. So if folks are not comfortable with 10, we can certainly bump that up or put a time frame in there, you know, that would be an option as well.
So it specifically states in that, that it would be the existing officer that was prior, is that
It's the
correct?
highest ranking officer.
Okay.
So if for some reason the president was no longer serving on the board, it would go down to the vice president would serve as president for that term with a vote of the board. So,
I just didn't, I mean, the coin flip does sound, we discussed.
Yeah.
And talked about, it. I was thinking that when you have like we had 3 new board members come into play, and if one of them runs for president and they weren't on the board
deadlock,
prior
right?
to that,
Yeah,
then I don't know if it's fair or not. Now.
Right.
The more I've been thinking about it.
Yeah. and we can
Just
certainly
an
discuss.
option. Yeah, it's
Yes.
something we need to probably talk about, because who knows, you know, I don't know.
Right. So this is just the first reading of these policies, so certainly can revisit, and if other folks have ideas, please come forward. We'd love to hear if people have
This is
suggestions.
only for that initial meeting. So
Yes.
do we, or have we started discussing in general tiebreakers? Or what is the tiebreaker when it is
It
not?
just doesn't pass.
It just doesn't
If it's a
pass.
motion, it
Exactly.
doesn't pass.
It would fail by failing the path, right?
Because it didn't pass, it failed.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Any other feedback on the tiebreaker policy or suggestions on how to make that a better resolution in the event that happens?
I like that option a lot versus.
Yes, I would prefer not to do it.
And I get what you're saying, but also I think it's too, if you think of it that way, Tim, that we're also keeping some kind of experience on the board.
From somebody else,
too. Right.
Oh, I understand that. I just, again, 3 new board members have to roll in and somebody else for president. I'm just thinking of them at this point.
Right, and that would only happen if there was a tiebreaker, right? So there's a deadlock for 10 votes, so
Yep.
hopefully we don't have it.
No, exactly.
Okay.
I mean, what is the only other suggestion I have is to have us consider an odd number of board members in moving forward. What is the protocol for that? Do you know?
The way it sounded is majority of the state school boards are all an even number, which does not make sense to me at all. I think every board should be an odd number no matter what board it is, for that simple reason of tiebreaker.
I'll bet about 90% of school boards are 6. There's some 7s and 9s. most all 7s and 9s are consolidated districts that wanted to keep multiple boards together.
Sure.
There are some, don't get me wrong, but it's pretty few and far between. And it also doesn't make sense.
Well, and I mean, we haven't, obviously, hopefully we will not continue to have any issues with that. That was interesting to me.
Yes.
That why do we have an even number? We can end at a time, so.
Right. All right, we'll look into that and see what the process would be to add board members, just so we have an awareness on what that is. Good question, thank you. Anybody else have feedback on that? Okay, is that it on the 200s? Okay, I looked at this.
Not even
sometimes.
close.
Okay, I need a cue sheet here. Okay, so we have updated our practice with respect to uploading the agenda on the district's website. And so obviously want to make sure our policy reflects that, trying to make that more accessible to folks. Public comment and board meetings did not really reflect what we were doing. So tried to update that to say, if you would like to speak at public forum in a board meeting, just get the sheet from the back of the room and provide that to the board secretary. So again, changes to reflect our current practices. The policy adoption, we had not selected whether it was 2 or 3 readings of policies. And so we are updating our policy to actually formally select, when an ASB provides the policies to us, they give us choices. So we decided to go forward with 2 readings of the policy instead of 3. So we will be removing 3, it's not an option. And then board association membership. So we were doing this, we noticed that our current policy says that we're required to be a member of the Nebraska Association of School Boards. Not that we have any issues with that, but gosh, that seems like a strong word, we require membership, so we decided to give ourselves more flexibility and go with May. So updating that as well. Are there any questions? I know that was a lot of policy tonight, so probably not the best night to add the 100 and 200s, but we've been working on them for months, so we're gonna try to move those forward, so.
Thanks for doing that.
All right, so those were the first readings, so we will review again next month. And if any board members have any feedback or questions for administration, I encourage you to reach out and get your questions answered so we're comfortable with next month's vote. All right, the next item is to discuss, consider, and take action on revising the school calendar for the 23-24 school year. Dr. Claus, do you want to give us a little bit of an update on what the change would be and why?
Yeah, so the current calendar has an early dismissal on April 17th, and we're requesting to move that to April 9th. Currently on April 9th, we have the ACT for 11th graders, and so there's the early dismissal at the high school. And so putting those onto the same day can help our families if you have a high schooler picking up an elementary kid or whatever the situation may be. It's just a little cleaner for us to do that all on one day as opposed to having 2 separate dismissals and just the oddities between buildings. So we thought that'd help our families, in addition, help our staff, because we could structure some professional development that day and everybody be on the same schedule. So that's the first proposed change. The second one is on April 16th, is the Bennington Track and Field invite. And so obviously that's a great invite. I know about it from just being in other towns as well. I think Bennington's hosted over 40 years. And so it's just an awesome event, but it requires a lot of staff and a lot of parking, of which we don't have when we're in school. So last year's board allowed an early dismissal on that day as well. What it did is allowed more staff to help at the event. It cleared the kids out, allowed more parking for the fans as well. And so be adding one more early dismissal day. In addition, the staff that aren't helping, we can provide them some more time. Which in April, I think everybody can use a little bit more time when you're an educator. And so it's just got a lot of positives to it. So we're looking for approval to change one day and then add a second day.
Just thank you to Dr. Hoagie and the whole administration for bringing this to our attention earlier. I know last year we did this in the middle of the year, and that causes stress for our families. So to the extent we can decide on this kind of thing in advance of the school year, allows for a seamless communication. So I appreciate the advanced warning for folks. It's 2 Tuesdays in a row in April, so it's just, a lot. So yeah, the more notice we can give folks, the better, as far as I'm concerned. Any other questions, comments? There's a motion on the floor.
I move for the approval of the revised 2023-24 school calendar as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Jeremy and Tim. Is there any further discussion on the calendar changes proposed this evening? All right, Jody, call the roll.
Tim,
Yes.
Christie,
Yes.
Kara,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
All right, motion passes. The next item before the board for action is to discuss, consider, and take action on short and long-term substitute rates. And quite a bit of information on this. I appreciate the diligence the administration went to get us comparables from other districts to make sure we're competitive. You want to give us any feedback on that?
Yeah, so currently we pay $165 for short-term subs, that's you getting called in that day, it's $165. If you're a long-term subs, you're in the same classroom more than 10 days, at day 11, you switch over to long-term rate, which is $180 per day. Currently, we are ranked tied for third out of the 14 schools in the array, which is pretty much all your metro schools. And then for the long-term sub pay, we're in fourth out of 14. But you can see there's like 7 or 8 of the schools are all at $165. And so, you never know exactly what's going to happen. As of this time, we're not aware of any metro districts that are recommending an increase. Doesn't mean that's not happening tonight or next week, depending on the district. We're not aware of any. If we decided to raise it, every dollar would cost the district about $3,500 on the short term, and about $500 on the long term. And so we're recommending at this time to keep it at 165 and 180 for next school year, being as though we're already, third in the array and doing pretty well in that regard. The Building and Finance Committee did review this as well, and they're recommending as well that it remain at 165 and 180.
Are there any other questions from the board members on this particular item? There is a motion on the floor.
I move to approve the short-term substitute pay at $165 and the long-term substitute pay at $180 for the 2023-24 school year.
I'll second.
Thank you, Christie and Kara. There's no further discussion. Jody, will you call the roll?
Kara,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Christie,
Yes.
All right, next item is to discuss, consider, and take action to reaffirm the student fee policy, which we've discussed, we've heard about this evening previously in our public hearing. Dr. Claus, do you have anything to add in specifics with the student fee policy? This is an annual review required by statute, and we did not hear any comments this evening. I know the policy committee's looked at it, so.
Yeah, no, at this time, neither NASB or Perry Law is recommending any changes to this policy.
There is a motion on the floor, and then we can have discussion.
I move to reaffirm student fee policy 504.19.
Second.
Thank you, Jeremy and Tim. Is there any discussion on the student fee policy? All right, Jody, call the roll.
Tim,
Yes.
Christie,
Yes.
Kara,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
Motion passes. The next item is to discuss, consider, and take action to reaffirm the parental involvement policy. We did have a hearing on this evening. The policy committee has reviewed the policy that we have. Is there any comments or feedback from the board on this particular policy? Dr. Claus, do you have anything to add here?
Just the same, neither NASB or Perry Law is recommending a change at this time.
All right, we'll take a motion.
I move to reaffirm parental involvement policy 1005.03.
Second.
Thank you, Kara and Jeremy. Jody, call the roll.
Allison,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Christie,
Yes.
Kara,
Yes.
The last item before the board this evening is to discuss, consider, and take action to reaffirm the bullying policy. Dr. Claus, do you want to highlight anything for us?
So public hearing is not necessarily required, but we did that. Reaffirming this is not necessarily required. We just have to review it once a year. Obviously, Bennington's kind of going above and beyond, make sure people have a voice in that, and then also going before you for approval, but just so we're on the same page with that. And again, neither NASB or Perry Law is recommending any revisions to this policy.
I move to reaffirm bullying prevention policy 504.20.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Christie. Jody, call the roll. Sorry, I'm going to the
That's okay. Tim,
Yes.
Christie,
Yes.
Kara,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Jeremy.
Yes.
All right, thank you for joining us this evening. For everybody in the room, just want to highlight our next regular meeting is August 14th. This is a regular board meeting at 6 p.m. in this district office. We do have a special meeting scheduled for next Monday, July 17th. This is our Board of Education retreat that is associated with our NASB contract on the superintendent search. So this will be a meeting to discuss their recommendations with respect to goal planning on that. The committee meetings will be held, I'm certain we're scheduled for the policy committee. We're meeting the fourth Monday on July 24th, so we'll have an update for the board at our next meeting. And then the NASB area membership meeting dates, September 19th in La Vista and September 20th in Fremont.
Do we typically go to one of those, or
I have been in the past to the Fremont one, but I don't know that it's required.
pick and choose? Is that sort of how it sounds? Okay.
Mhm.
There's others, those are the closest, though.
Right. All right, I believe that I can move to adjourn the meeting.
I move to adjourn meeting.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Jeremy. Jody, you want to call the roll?
Christie,
Yes.
Kara,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
Tim.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
7:05.